The Fantasy Holics Podcast.
Jackson takes it himself, looking in dirt, back and forth. Oh, he broke his ankles. Now he's got an entourage, and he's got a touchdown.
Your source for all things fantasy. So fill up your cup, sit back, and enjoy.
What's up, everyone, and welcome to another installment of the Fantasy Holics Podcast. Today we are talking some NBA basketball, and we are in the middle of our prospect mini-series where we are breaking down a prospect in each episode. My name is Jordan Jaika, aka Dr. Fantasy, and I am here today with Zach, and we are talking about a prospect that he is very excited about today, Josh Green from Arizona. So he is ready. He's licking his chops right now. So you ready to go with Josh Green?
Oh, yes. Let's get it.
So I'll give you a quick recap, and then I'll let Zach kind of hop into Josh Green a little bit. So he was a freshman last year for Arizona, entering the NBA draft after one season. Put up pretty solid numbers last year with 12 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 steals. More of a stat stuffing kind of season. Wasn't anything that pops off the page, but had a solid 78% free throw percentage. He's only 19, which Zach's going to bring up a little bit too. A very young prospect, really strong defender, and I think I'll let you talk about this a little bit, but we definitely both think that he's a really NBA-ready prospect.
Oh, yeah. That's my biggest thing with him starting it off. You don't see many prospects only 19 years old that are this NBA ready. I mean, obviously he has aspects of his game that he needs to work on, which we'll get into, but in terms of just NBA readiness, there isn't that many in this class, and there hasn't been that many in recent memory that just are NBA ready after 1 year. It's not like he spent 2 or 3 years in college. Like he was a one and done, and he is surprisingly NBA ready.
Yeah, no, and I think he's really well built too for today's NBA game. You know, he has a huge wingspan at 6'10", which is fantastic for his size. So, you know, he's going to be able to guard multiple positions. To me, the reason why he's the most NBA ready, he definitely has some pieces in his offensive game he needs to work on. But defensively, he's a very solid defender. He's going to kind of fit into that modern NBA where he's able to guard multiple positions from the 2, 3, 4. So, you know, that's really valuable. He's a good rebounder, a very solid passer for a guy his size. But I'll let you talk a little bit. What do you think that he needs to work on for his offensive game?
Oh, man, you're gonna make me talk bad about Josh Green for a second.
You said he has no weaknesses, so you know I'm gonna let you talk about one of his weaknesses.
I think one thing especially he needs to work on, and I think this is an issue with a lot of guys. He only goes to his right when he's driving. I think he needs to work on going to his left when he's driving to the basket. And another thing, his mid-range game when he was in college wasn't the he could easily work on his mid-range game as well. Although even though in today's NBA, like how important is the mid-range game, but that's still something you wanna have in your arsenal.
Yeah, and he didn't have the greatest 3-point percentage, so that's something he can probably work on a little bit too. And I think overall, probably the only weakness I would say he has offensively, and you kind of alluded to it already, but it's more that I think he lacks a little bit of creativity, I guess I'll say, because he struggles a little bit with pulling up. You know, if you're always driving to the right and not using your left hand, defenders are going to be able to pick up on that pretty quickly. So I think that he'll have to work a little bit to get more creative. But he's built to where, I mean, he can get to the basket if he wants to. It's about just getting a little more creative with the moves that he uses more down in the post. And then working on, he's not a bad shooter. I won't say he's a bad shooter by any stretch of the imagination, but he definitely has to work on the consistency and making sure his percentages are up to par.
Yeah, I would say so. I think all of his all of his perceived weaknesses are something that just can be worked on through practice and whatnot. He has all the tools are there. He just needs to get on the court and get the practice and everything. But all his weaknesses are stuff that can easily be fixed.
Right. Yeah, no, I would definitely agree with that. And I know you, I'm looking at the article that you have coming out this week on him too. And another thing, and I actually really agree with this assessment, you had it as a weakness. I don't know if I'd necessarily say this is a weakness, but I would say he is one of the most surefire prospects in terms of, I'm pretty confident he's going to have a good NBA career. So you had it that he's good at a lot of things, but he's not necessarily elite. And I definitely agree with that. And if anything, even if he's not an NBA All-Star every year, I definitely think at worst he's going to be a really good sixth man off the bench that can spot start for you, a really good defender, a good shooter, a good scorer. So I think that's at worst. I think he can develop into more. And we already mentioned he's super young. So I'll let you go into where do you have him fitting in the NBA with what team?
I like the Pelicans. You got with his stuff he needs to work on. He goes to a team like the Pelicans. He doesn't have the pressure of contributing right away. You got Zion there. You got Brandon Ingram there. Lonzo Ball's coming around. Mm-hmm. So I think with that system, he can either start at the other guard position if they decide to move on from Jrue Holiday, or he can be like sixth man off the bench, like you said. Mm-hmm. But I think New Orleans gives him the time he needs to work on his game, be able to contribute to that team. And New Orleans, I think, a little off topic here, I think New Orleans next season is going to be a team to really watch out for, especially if they add a guy like Josh Green in the draft.
Yeah, no, and just to add on to that piece a little bit, I mean, we saw before the season halted that the Pelicans were really starting to come on. They were only a few games out of that 8th spot, and they really struggled early in the season, but as soon as Zion started really catching fire, and once he was healthy and playing, it took them to a different level. So they're going to be fun to watch the next few years. They still have a ton of picks in the next few drafts too. So their team's already young enough, and they're just going to keep adding and adding every season. So it'll be fun to watch. For my teams, I had the Trailblazers and the Timberwolves. The reason for that is I think at his worst, he's a really strong 3-and-D forward guard with really good size. So when you look at the Trailblazers, they have Lillard and McCollum. And when you look at that kind of 3 wings position, they've had Carmelo and Trevor Ariza. But both of those guys are getting older. I wouldn't say that they're going to be looking at them long term. So if anything, I think that Green would be able to step in. He could potentially start from day one, but if anything, he could learn from those 2 guys, sit behind them maybe for a year and take over the next season and still only be 20 years old. Same with the Timberwolves. I mean, that's a roster that I think always underachieves. Every year I look at their roster, I'm like, man, they're so talented. And then they just stink every season. So after losing Andrew Wiggins, though, I think he can fill in that role and kind of what they wanted Andrew Wiggins to be. Wiggins was solid offensively, but really struggled defensively. So I think he would fit in pretty well with what they're trying to accomplish there. And then to finish everything off, we'll go over an NBA comparison. I'll start with mine, and I'll let you end it because I think yours is so perfect that I just want to end off on it. So I really like Zach's, and for the record, I agree with Zach, but I didn't want to copy him. So I'll throw out a few other names that I have. I had Danny Green, Josh Richardson, Justice Winslow. So all guys that are 3-and-D guys, strong shooters, good defenders. Danny Green's carved out a really nice long career, and I think at the worst, that's what you're going to be looking at with Josh here. So I think that's kind of the worst case scenario, maybe Danny Green. But I mean, even worst case scenario, if you get Danny Green for 10 to 15 years, there's nothing wrong with that. So I'll swing it over to you and have you talk a little bit about your NBA comparison.
Okay, so my NBA comparison is Kelly Oubre of the Suns and as you know, and as a lot of people in the group in our group know, I'm huge on Kelly Oubre, which is probably why I like Josh Green so much. That he's basically Kelly Oubre. Solid 3-point shooter, not the greatest, but that's something he can work on. Oubre can defend multiple positions on the court, just like Josh Green. And if you look at the role that Kelly Oubre fills for the Phoenix Suns, you got Devin Booker there, you got DeAndre Ayton. I think he can fill that very similar role for my NBA team in the Pelicans. So.
Yeah, no, and I think that's it's a perfect comparison. And when Oubre first came out too, I mean, he didn't really catch on until last season. So, it took him a year or two before he really started to get his feet under him. And I think that Josh Green's really refined and can be effective immediately, but it still might take a year before he really steps into a big starting role. So I think it's a perfect comparison. I think they're mirror images of one another. So I like it a lot. And I'm sure you're going to be taking Josh Green in a few fantasy drafts just for that purpose.
Oh yeah,
yes. That Oubre and Josh Green combo.
Oh, I'm gonna have both of them.
But I think that's anything else before I wrap it up. Anything else you want to say about your boy here?
Oh no, I think I've fanboyed over him enough for one day.
Alrighty, so that's all that we have on Josh Green today, and this is going to be the end of this installment. We're going to have this coming out, a few prospects coming out for the next few weeks, so make sure you tune in for that. And if you don't already, make sure you subscribe to the Fantasyholics on YouTube. You can like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter at FantasyHolics1, and make sure you check out our new website, thefantasyholics.com. We're releasing anywhere from 3 to 5 articles every single day, so lots of content there. So thank you guys for tuning in, and make sure you check us out.